In episode 100, I share a recent conversation I had with a learner and how to go about narrowing down a topic. Hello and welcome. My name is Benjamin Stewart at benjaminlstewart.net. Before we get into today's topic, if you have any thoughts, insights, or would like to share a related experience, feel free to reach out to me at my Twitter handle at BNLEEZ. Today I want to share with you a recent conversation I had with a learner who is thinking about ways in which he can narrow down a topic. I want to share this conversation because I think a lot of learners who are thinking about the same, how to go about narrowing down a topic, might benefit having listened to this conversation. This is a conversation I have a lot with students. It's a very typical type of conversation in some things to think about, trying to bring in and incorporate the interests of the student based on his or her experience, and also information that's related to the literature, information that's related to articles that they have already come across. So a lot of times these conversations are meant to serve as suggestions, taking into consideration what they've already learned about the topic, what they've read about, and kind of direct them into a topic that's more specific, that's more appropriate for a 5-paragraph essay. So here's the recent conversation I had with Oscar.
Teacher, I have a couple of questions. Well, first I have to say that yesterday I decided to change my topic, I think completely.
Okay.
So is it okay if I have more than one topics included in the topic? I was thinking about collaborative learning, and I was also thinking about language teaching and technology, because my idea is to make a persuasive essay about ideas for helping English teaching students, for example, us as teachers in preparation, to work with more collaborative assignments, because I have noticed during this pandemic time that most of the assignments have been individual assignments. We haven't had this interaction, this collaboration. So I was thinking about this, about learning or promoting collaborative works during online classes, because of what I have seen during the pandemic. So I'm not sure if I am using two topics or just focusing on one.
Thinking of a thesis statement, right? You start with the transition. Now let's start with the topic. English language teachers can promote collaboration in the English language classroom. Okay. Now, generally speaking, do you want to talk about how, or do you want to talk about why? When you think about the overall structure of your essay, do you have a preference, one or the other?
That's a good question that I was actually analyzing yesterday with a friend. If should I choose why or how? Because, for example, if I think about the question why, let me putting on headphones. Then some reasons come to my mind. For example, to create deeper engagement within the group, to promote creativity, things like that.
Yeah. So
in terms of how, maybe it could be like the techniques, the activities that we could use. So it's also something interesting for me.
All right, so let me tell you this here. You have when I ask all of you guys to think about either a question, a how question, or a why question. This doesn't mean that you can only talk about how or only talk about why throughout the whole essay. What I'm suggesting is when you think of those key points, I would choose one or the other, how or why. Now, when you get into the body paragraphs, you can talk about the what, the how, the why, the when, the where, with whom. I mean, you can talk about whatever it is you need to talk about. But what are we doing? We're actually thinking paragraph to paragraph and sticking to one key question, right? That key question is going to appear in the indirect question, in the problem statement, right? And our thesis statement is going to answer that by using the right connector, because or by, right? Just to say, okay, paragraph 1, this is the first way. Paragraph 2, this is the second way. Paragraph 3, this is the third way in my description of how something happens. But of course, you get into the paragraph, you might talk, okay, this is why it happens, this is when it happens, where it happens. So think about, again, you can talk about both and other question words, but at this level, we're thinking about the level of the body paragraph, which would make most sense in terms of the problem that you're considering, right? And just your overall structure that you think makes more sense. And again, really, it could be either or. Think of the articles that you have been reading, right, and the information that you have in preparation for writing these body paragraphs, and just choose one that you think would be most logical. Again, for most essays, a how or a why type of question are the most common choices. It could be a when, it could be a where, okay, but it's typically not a what question, right? That's kind of a different thing. So you choose one, a question word that you think is most appropriate for those body paragraphs, and keep in mind that later you can expand your discussion. In fact, you'll want to, right? It's not going to be all just talking why, right? You'll be thinking about other question words for each of the body paragraphs. Now,
Okay.
the collaboration and technology, like for me, what I'm thinking about here is just an essay on collaboration, and then you bring in the topic of technology perhaps throughout the whole essay, right? You mention technology in the thesis statement in a way that suggests that, okay, we're talking about collaboration using certain maybe even certain technologies. Maybe you could even be more specific. Let's say social media. You could even go super specific, talking about Facebook only, right? Again, which articles have you been reading? What are your interests, right? How do you want to present your ideas? But notice this is the thought process that I go through with your example, thinking about, okay, how can I make this more specific? So you're actually combining these terms, collaboration, maybe even being more specific than technology, because technology, wow, it's all kinds of things, right? So it's all kinds of ideas. So maybe it's social media, maybe it's, WhatsApp, maybe whatever. Now, just be careful not to go too specific, because this is going to depend on the articles that you've been reading so far. So again, make these decisions based on what you've read so far and maybe what you still need to read to get a little bit more information depending on these decisions. You see what I mean?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And actually, this reminds me my other question, which is if you think that this topic could work for a persuasive essay.
Absolutely. And we didn't mention online learning, right? So that's another key point. That's another key word. Online learning, collaboration, maybe a certain type of technology. I feel like maybe a certain type of technology would be a good choice instead of maybe just saying technology super general. But those three key words, and this is really for everyone, this conversation we're having, think of, I would say, 5 to 8 key words that best relate, right, to your essay. And in your example, Scott, certainly online learning, collaboration, maybe even cooperation, if you want to talk about those two. That's up to you. I'm hesitant on technology, maybe social media or whatever word that represents maybe a kind of technology that you want to limit your discussion in, okay? I'm also thinking about maybe synchronous or asynchronous communication. I'm just thinking out loud here, but you can get your keywords from your articles, right, based on what you want to write about. But synchronous and asynchronous communication, because that's coming to mind. Maybe even peer assessment, if you want to talk about peer assessment. You don't have to, but it relates to collaboration. Mixed abilities, strong students with the weak students, or do you group collaboration with students of the same level? Okay, so again, thinking out loud here, but let those articles that you're reading about help you find and define those keywords. Write them out as soon as you can and go back to those so that it's a reminder. All right, I'm staying on topic. These are my 5 to 8 keywords, and it's really limiting my scope, which is what we want to do. And I just think that's another piece of this writing process to help us be a little bit more specific. But I like the topic. This is, I think you'll find tons and tons and tons of information, right? I think there are a lot of articles and research out there on this topic.
Yes, and it's one thing that I liked it is that is information that is new. It's not like from the 90s or the 80s.
Right. I mean, if you want to talk within the context of COVID, great, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all new topics. But also, just keep an open mind just in case, because sometimes if we get too specific, we might say, well, I didn't find enough about COVID specifically. Don't ignore maybe some of the older research that is still relevant to your thesis. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Yes, try to keep up, as current as possible. But that doesn't mean necessarily that you have to ignore older research.
Sure, true. What I was thinking. Well, online learning is, as you said, one of the bases for this essay, because I was reading about how online learning has existed from decades, maybe. But now with this pandemic, it's more evident that online learning is here to stay, right? That now maybe more schools will use this, even though we get to come back to live sessions in school.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yes, it was one of the contents that I would like to touch, this present situation for learning. And right. Maybe it could work for the introduction paragraph, right? To set the context.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got a lot to that you could include when we talk about defining the problem, right? Defining the problem as it relates to your thesis. Just make sure that our job in the introduction paragraph is to link the problem to the thesis statement. So we could also go too general on the problem if we don't see the direct relationship to the thesis. So just kind of keep that in mind. You're talking about online learning, right? Collaboration. So think of the problem that relates to online learning, collaboration and technology, right? That's your thesis. So the problem needs to be a very direct, relationship to that thesis, instead of maybe just saying the problem is, in Mexico there have been, thousands of cases of COVID. Yeah, that's a problem, right? But it's an economic problem. It's a social cultural problem. It's an educational problem. See what I mean? I mean, that's really general. So you want to make sure that you're presenting the problem in such a way that the reader says, "Oh, yeah, I see the association or the link to the thesis statement." So just keep that in mind when you're developing the problem, not to go too general. Just like with the rest of our essay, we can go too general on the problem if the reader's like, "Well, okay, but is that an economic problem or an educational problem?" Right? You want to keep it all educational because that's your thesis. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, but I like the topic. Sounds good.
Thanks for that.
So that was a recent conversation I had with Oscar related to narrowing down his topic for his 5-paragraph essay. One of the things to note was at the beginning of the conversation, Oscar mentioned that he wanted to change completely his topic. And this is something that I encourage a lot of students to do when they are at a point where they think they need to change their topic or even modify it. A lot of times that's a good time to receive feedback. That is, it's a good time for us to have a conversation. And from my perspective as their instructor, it's always trying to use what they have in terms of the readings, trying to use that information, those articles that they've already found. Usually that's something that they're interested in. And sometimes it's a matter of finding different search approaches. Maybe they just haven't found the appropriate articles to continue on the topic that they are interested in. So a lot of times it's good to have a conversation to see, in fact, if it is necessary to completely change the topic, or in most cases, just slightly modifying it, maybe changing one of the 3 key points listed at the end of the thesis statement. That's usually what's required, instead of just having to completely change the topic. Also, another thing that we didn't that wasn't brought up in this conversation, but I think is relevant, is making sure that the 3 key points that students choose, or that you choose as the writer, that's listed in the thesis statement, that those 3 key points are not being subsumed to any of the other 2 key points. That is, they're separate ideas. They could link. There could be a relationship or an association with those 3, but one key point is not a subsection or a subpoint of another key point. That they're separate in that respect. So that'll conclude today's broadcast. If you are an instructor and have experience giving feedback to students related to writing and trying to narrow down your topic, I'm interested in your experiences. Feel free to reach out to me at my Twitter handle at BNLEEC. My name is Benjamin Stewart at benjaminlstewart.net, making teaching and learning more transparent. Thanks for listening.